pleasure to officially welcome all of you here to the meeting. As part of the opening comments that I would like to make is we mentioned at our December meeting that we were running a test as it related to webcasting our public meetings, and this meeting is not a test as it relates to webcasting. The website has been listed on our web page, and this meeting is being webcast, which would be indicative of, in addition to the travel, as to why you might not see some of the individuals that you are accustomed to seeing in the audience for some of these meetings, because they now in fact have access to the meetings by way of webcast. As Vice Chair, let me also take this time to thank Dr. Gilliam and her team, as well as the many volunteers, specifically and the sponsors, Eastman, Food City, Mountain State Health Alliance, the power companies, and others for the work that they have done in helping to prepare for these meetings, because we know that a lot of time and effort has gone into the preparation of these meetings. I would also like to thank one of our colleagues here who is a regent, Paul Montgomery, for the work that he has done as it relates to being a part of Eastman, and more importantly, helping the economy in this community, and working hard behind the scenes to ensure that we got a meeting up here in East Tennessee, and the hospitality has been extremely great. We are most appreciative of that, Paul, and I want to personally thank you for that time and effort. I will say at this stage, so that there are no concerns, undue disruptions, etc., we are pleased that the governor of the newly elected governor of the state of Tennessee has indicated that he not just indicated, he will be attending our meeting and will be coming in. For the record, as soon as he gets here, we will take a brief recess to allow him to come in and get seated. So when that occurs, it's not that there's any abnormal processes in place, but I just wanted the group to realize on the front end that that in fact is going to occur, as well as under the statute, we have a couple of or more new members who are a part of the body. Unfortunately, they are not able to attend. We have the Commissioner of Agriculture, who is Julius Johnson, who is a member by statute on the Board of Regents, as well as the Commissioner of Education, to whom is also a member, but he does not take office until if I believe it's around the 4th of April, but he will be at our next meeting that we have. So those individuals will be with us a little, well, not today, but at our next meeting. So I wanted to provide that to you by way of background information. The next item that I would like to briefly talk about is some work that we, the members of the Board of Regents, engaged in yesterday. Our typical operating practice is on Thursday is to have committee meetings, as many of you are aware. Thanks to our new Chancellor, John Morgan, it was recommended that we engage in a strategic planning process for this board to more or less ensure that we all were on the same page, and to begin a process to redefine the focus and direction of the Board of Regents as it relates to the Complete Tennessee Act that was recently approved. And as a member of this body, even though it was a long 8-hour plus day, I was extremely pleased at the way that my colleagues rolled up their sleeves and put genuine work into working on the strategic plan of the organization. We worked with a young lady who is actually unable to be with us this morning because her flight left this morning. She's from Utah, former head of the higher education system in Utah, Dr. C.C. Foxley, and led some genuine dialogue to which some of that will be discussed a little later, but more importantly, I think what it did for us is it made us realize that albeit there are a number of different entities that comprise the Tennessee Board of Regents, we are one system, and our challenge is to focus not just on the students, but to focus on the graduation of those students and put a plan in process that is basically a plan of accountability. But the thing I wanted the members and individuals who are here to really get a sense of is the level of work that the board put forth in working cohesively on developing and identifying the good, the bad, and I'll call it the indifferent because I don't want to call it the ugly, but the indifferent as it relates to some of the issues that we're dealing with. And it made me feel good that we're on that path to address those issues, and we'll be coming back with a formal plan or a presentation of a formal strategic plan to you as it relates to the operations and expectations of our institutions and our presidents and directors. Those are my opening remarks. I will turn to Chancellor Morgan to see if he has any opening comments that he wants to make.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. Only to add my thanks to Dr. Gilliam and the folks here at Northeast for hosting us, making us feel welcome. It is a somewhat of a pain, I know, to go through what you have to go through to make us feel as comfortable as you have made us feel. So thank you very much, and it's a pleasure to be here. I'll talk a little more about the retreat, but I think I'll wait until my report to do that, Mr. Vice Chair, if that is agreeable with you.
Yes, that's fine. Thank you. I apologize, and I know we saw the mayor of the county by way of video, but I did not get a list. Are there any elected officials with us today that has not been recognized? Because if so, I truly would like to have you stand and be acknowledged if you are here. All right, moving on then with the agenda. Madam Secretary Chris Monisher, would you call the roll?
Regent Duckett.
Here.
Regent Ferris.
Here.
Regent Gidcombe.
Here.
Regent Griscom.
Here.
Regent Kisber is here. Regent Markham.
Here.
Regent McCullum.
Here.
Regent Montgomery.
Here.
Regent Reynolds.
Here.
Regent Roddy.
Here.
Regent Thomas. Regent Varlin.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Okay. Thank you. Recognizing that a quorum is present, the next item then is the approval of the minutes, which is under our consent agenda. Those minutes are the minutes from our December 2nd, 2010 regular quarterly board meeting. Does anyone have any changes or corrections to those minutes? If not, I would accept a motion to approve those minutes.
So moved.
Is there a second? It's been properly motioned to approve and second those minutes. Any discussion? Hearing none, this is an item that requires a voice vote. All in favor of approval of the minutes of December 2nd indicate by aye. Aye. Opposes the same. Thank you. Moving next to interim actions that have occurred post our December 2nd board meeting. I'll call on Chancellor Morgan for any comments that he might have as it relates to any actions that we need to officially ratify at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. I believe each of you have had the report on interim actions forwarded to you for review. As is usual, this report outlines the business transacted by the Chancellor's Office at the Board since the last quarterly meeting. Pending any questions that you may have, I would recommend approval of the report on interim action.
Chancellor Morgan has recommended approval of interim actions. Are there any questions or discussions related to any of those items? Hearing none, is there a motion to ratify and approve the interim actions taken? Is there a second?
Second.
It's been properly motioned and seconded to approve the interim action. All in favor? Any discussion? Sorry, don't want to rush things. Hearing none, all in favor signify by aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Thank you. The interim actions are approved. We now move into the phase of our agenda which deals with reports of committees. Our first committee report is the report of, the approval and report related to the Finance and Business Operations Committee. They have, I must commend Regent Ferris and the members of the committee because they have been doing a lot of diligent work as it relates to the operations of finance and business administration and operations. But is there a motion to approve the reports that have been submitted and are part of your packet as it relates to finance and business operations, the January 31st as well as the February 14th report that is in your packet?
Move approval.
It's been approved by Mr. Ferris. Is there a second? Second by Regent McCullum. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by aye. Aye. Opposes, the same sign. Thank you. Next committee report is the committee report of audit, which was held on March 8th. That too was provided to members of the Board of Regents, and it's in your packet. Is there a motion to approve the audit committee's report as of March 8th?
So moved.
Moved by Regent Markham. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Regent Thomas. Any discussion? Hearing none, this item is an item that requires a voice vote. All in favor signify by aye. Aye. Opposes, the same sign. Thank you. Audit report is approved. We now have the approval of the minutes related to the special call meeting of the Finance and Business Operations Committee. These minutes at least include recommendations as it relates to incidental fee requests by various institutions and to provide some additional information. I think it's appropriate that we call on Vice Chancellor Sims to come forth and give us some added update on this item.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Members, good morning. First, I should say that the detail materials are included within your board book. They're behind the tab on new business action items. They follow the strategic planning materials. So if you want to reference the detailed information, it is there. What I will go over today is a summary of the recommendations of the Committee on Finance and Business Operations as they pertain to mandatory and incidental fees. What I'll do is start with a basic timeline. Mr. Vice Chair, those in the audience and those viewing, this item will take a little bit of time at this board meeting, but it is really the culmination of many hours of work on behalf of the board committee, individual board members, institutional staff, and TBR staff. The rough timeline is outlined before you. This process actually began last November when there were instructions sent to institutions on their submission of fee requests. Those were worked through at the campus level and submitted to the central office in mid-January. The first meeting of the committee, as you've just noted, was on January 31st, with a subsequent committee meeting on Valentine's Day, I would note, on February 14th. And that was followed then by a meeting on March 7th of the committee, where the committee received the staff recommendations on the fee requests that had been submitted. On March 8th at your chair's meeting, the remaining members of the board were also briefed on the results of the committee's deliberations. So again, this is the culmination, so to speak, of a rather lengthy and deliberative process. In terms of summary of what the committee has recommended, stating it somewhat in themes, the committee essentially asked that we, in making recommendations to the committee and the committee in making recommendations to the board, that we focus on some themes. One of the themes is that we focus on actions that would support the Complete College Act. So that has been one of the points of emphasis here. I think it's important to recognize the actions that the committee is recommending in that regard. First, our community colleges, the committee's action is to remove graduation fees at community colleges. This achieves essentially two purposes. One is it becomes a more uniform fee structure within our community colleges, but importantly, it removes a barrier to those graduations at community colleges, where in many cases a student had to pay a fee in order to begin that process of being recognized as a graduate from that institution. That fee is no longer there, so there's that barrier has been removed, or is proposed to be removed by the committee's action. Would also acknowledge Austin Peay State. They have asked for a fee that applies to a certain course. This course is a course that is required of freshmen who end up on academic probation, or students coming back from academic suspension. This fee supports an intense course that tutors students in test-taking strategies, time management skills, various skills that have been shown during the pilot program on this course to be extremely successful. This program, over 60% of the students complete this course, and I need to say there are phenomenal increases in GPAs as a result of them completing this course, upwards of 80 to 90% increases in GPA as a result of completing this course. So again, in terms of a completion agenda, feel very comfortable that this furthers our completion agenda. The second theme, since we are under a mandate to move toward a unified community college system, one of the goals was to fashion, to the extent we could, a more uniform fee structure. We've taken a very small step there, again, removal of graduation fees. We have substituted or recommended increasing a level of fee increase and another fee uniformly across the community colleges to substitute for that revenue. And then lastly, I should say that we've also, one of the things the committee and the staff looked for were addressing documented needs of institutions. I guess a theme for that, student health services, ensuring that the resources are there to meet the student health needs on our campuses. And as anyone that's been on a campus recently knows, parking is always an issue, and addressing parking issues among our campuses was another item. In terms of a financial summary, the recommendations received and approved are on the screen now. We have the results of the deliberations this year were for a majority of the fees that were requested to be recommended. Mandatory fees, $3.2 million, non-mandatory, $2.6 million. I was asked a question earlier today about, well, what is that in terms of maintenance fee or tuition? What would be equivalent amounts there? Combined, those would be a little less, right at 0.7% increase. So from the standpoint of money generated, it is a nominal amount. And as you might imagine, since the fee structure and the requests come from various institutions, it's not uniform across. I would note for the board's specific information, one of the actions that's contemplated here is that the debt service fee requested by Tennessee State University, that the board delegate authority to act on that fee to the Finance Committee. This is a fee that, given our cycle, they needed to submit. The fee submission is a little ahead of the capital planning process. So this recommendation, again, is that the committee have authority to act on behalf of the board. If this comes together prior to your June board meeting, it would be contemplated that that would be reported back up through and acted on by the board. But we wanted to be prepared if it could be moved sooner, or potentially if it is after the June meeting, that there be a body with authority to act. The next item, how does this work institution by institution? I know these numbers are pretty small. What we attempt to do here is show you the current maintenance fee by institution, their current mandatory fee level, the recommendations that are being made, and how that impacts students in terms of dollar change and percentage change. When you view these in isolation, the maintenance fees and the recommendations in terms of mandatory fees, the increases range from, for those institutions that requested a change, they range from 0.1% increase to a high of 2.5%. We also, for the board's information, put together columns, so to speak, that illustrate for you what happens, what does this look like if there is a 7% maintenance fee increase ultimately. If that were to occur, then the ranges of total change for students would be from 5.6% to a high of 8.3%. Mr. Vice Chair, before I close, I want to echo your compliments to the members of the committee, the leadership of Chairman Ferris. They have been very diligent. They have asked good questions. They've challenged staff, and believe it or not, we appreciate when we are asked challenging questions. I also want to thank Renee Stewart and Pat Massey in the central office, who are instrumental in preparing this information and in working through the analysis. And I lastly would like to also compliment the institutional staff and presidents for their work in supporting this effort. With those as my comments, Mr. Chair, the action recommended by the committee was to approve these fees as presented in your materials. This is an item that requires a roll call vote.
Yes. Thank you, Vice Chancellor Sims. At this time, I would turn to Regent Ferris to see if he has any comments that he would like to make as it relates to the work of the committee as well as the recommendations of the committee.
Well, I'd just like to thank Vice Chancellor Sims for putting all the material together and the fashion that you did that, Dale. It was great. We had a lot of good discussion on the committee. The committee talked about a lot of the issues that we have, and I think that it's great that we're looking more towards uniform fee system as time goes on. So I want to thank the members of the committee and also thank Dale and his staff. And I'll make a motion to approve the committee minutes.
Okay. You've heard a motion to approve the minutes of March 7th, which includes the recommended fee changes that have been outlined by Vice Chancellor Sims. Is there a second to that motion? Second by Regent Reynolds. This is an item, well, is there any further discussion first? Hearing none, this is an item that requires a roll call vote. Madam Secretary.
Regent Duckett?
Aye.
Regent Kisber? Aye. Regent Ferris? Aye. Regent Gidcombe? Aye. Regent Griscom? Aye. Regent Markham? Aye. Regent McCullum? Aye. Regent Montgomery? Aye. Regent Reynolds? Aye. Regent Roddy? Aye. Regent Thomas? Aye. Regent Varlin? Aye. Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Again, having participated in those conference calls, in the work of that committee, I do commend the staff and board members for the diligent, and I underscore diligent work that was done during these difficult times in meeting or attempting to meet a balance in what's the appropriate fees to implement as it relates to the various requests from the institutions. So thank you once again. Next item on the agenda is the Regents Award for Excellence in Philanthropy, and I will call on Regent Roddy for his report. This is an informational report, and it requires no formal action on the part of the board.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I'm pleased to report and share with the board the most recent recipients of the Regents Award for Excellence in Philanthropy, James Jim E. Brinkley and the late Nellie L. Brinkley. Jim was presented with the award at an East Tennessee State University special event on February 18th at the Meadowview Convention Center in Kingsport. Participating in the award presentation were Chancellor Morgan and President Stanton. Jim literally grew up from boyhood to adulthood on the East Tennessee State University campus. He was an elementary and secondary student at the training school, now known as University School, and after service in the U.S. Navy, he completed his undergraduate degree at the university. Although Jim and Nellie moved away from the East Tennessee State University community, they never forgot all that the university and faculty had done to urge Jim to stay the course to graduation. Over the years, they supported the university with annual fund gifts that gave non-traditional students scholarship funds to return and complete their degrees at East Tennessee State University. When the testamentary trust in their estate plan funds the Brinkley Scholarship Endowment in full, there will be at least $8 million to create educational support for East Tennessee State University students. Many of these students will be first-generation students from the region. Jim and Nellie have been honored as members of the East Tennessee State University Foundation President's Diamond Society for their current gifts and their future estate giving. This is a level of recognition that only 4 other corporate or individual donors have achieved in the 100 years of the university's existence. The board appreciates having the opportunity to acknowledge the contributions and commitments of James E. and the late Nellie L. Brinkley for East Tennessee State University and higher education. For additional comments, I would like to ask Dr. Paul Stanton to come to the podium at this time, please.
Thank you and good morning.
Good morning.
Regent Roddy, I very much appreciate the invitation to come before you and Vice Chairman Duckett, Chancellor Morgan, members of the Regents, staff. This is a very special gift. As you have heard in the presentation, the Brinkley Scholars are being made possible by one of the largest donations ETSU has had in 100 years. The Brinkley family, when they left ETSU about 1960, moved to Fort Pierce, Florida, established business transactions in real estate and home sales and marketing and many other things, but they never forgot ETSU. So 50 years later, they're making this very special gift possible. They're interested principally in first-time college goers from a family and those with special needs. This will involve giving full tuition scholarships, board, and books to all of the 50 to 100 scholars per year. And if a scholar lives more than 25 miles from the campus, they'll also get free room in their scholarship. You know, I think sometimes when I look down the road, and I know college presidents and directors always enjoy the commencement activities, but when I think about this Mays celebration that we'll have in just a few weeks, there could be a man like Jim Brinkley or a woman like Nellie Brinkley that'll come across that stage and receive the scholarship. Then in the year 2061, we may be here, some of us may, celebrating that special occasion. So every diploma we give out, every student we take care of, let's remember they are very special to us. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you, Dr. Stanton. Mr. Chairman, this concludes my report.
Thank you, Regent Roddy. I have been notified that the governor is en route and should be here shortly. I think it's important, as well as it has been indicated that the governor would like to hear the report of the chancellor, which would sum up some of the activities that have been going on, specifically as it relates to the Complete Tennessee Act. So at this stage or time, I would take a brief recess, and then we'll call the meeting back to order, hopefully in a couple of minutes, subject to traffic in the Tri-Cities area. Okay, well, recess not needed. Yes, the governor is here. Obviously, it is a pleasure to have with us the 49th, governor. little premature there on my part. The 49th governor of the state of Tennessee, Governor Haslam. I want to say on behalf of the members of the Board of Regents, we are personally appreciative of him taking time from his busy schedule to come to this meeting, because there are a number of things that he can do, but by appearing at this meeting, it shows the importance of higher education and education in general to him. So I am personally appreciative of your taking time to be with us. We were working our way through the agenda. The next formal item on the agenda is the Chancellor's report, and if that is okay, we'll proceed with the agenda, and then ultimately move into new business. But that will give you a chance to at least get a feel for some of the additional activities that are going on. So, Chancellor Morgan.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Doc, it is Governor, it's an honor to be with you. It's a pleasure to have you here. And we very much look forward to working with you, and especially we look forward to you working with us as we move forward. I'll give a brief report about some of the things I've been doing, and then I want to talk a little bit about an opportunity the board had yesterday to have a retreat, to have a working session that I believe sets us on a course that will be transformational for Tennessee and for our part of the system. As I indicated to the board back in December, I was engaged in visiting our campuses across this state. It's a big state, as you know, and I have almost made my way to all of our institutions. I have 8 left, 6 technology centers and 2 universities. Interestingly, the universities I hadn't been to yet are the ones that are closest to me, TSU and MTSU. But by the end of next month, I believe that is correct, I will have been at all of our institutions. One of the things that all of our institutions have in common is incredibly dedicated people who are doing what they believe is important work and what we all understand is important work. And it has been a pleasure to visit and to meet and to get a strong sense of purpose that we have throughout our system. One of the things I'd like to mention briefly, Dr. Paula Short is not with us today. The board members have at their place a program for a conference that she is hosting today in Nashville that is a research development conference. And for the first time, we think ever, all of our institutions have been invited, those who are engaged in research at various levels, have been invited to a conference to share best practices, to share ideas, to really get a sense of the whole as it relates to our system and the research activities going on. So she very much would like to be here, particularly because you're here, Governor, but this was scheduled in such a way where she couldn't. This is important work that we do, along with all the other work that we do in the Board of Regents. You know, we understand, and I think very much part of what came out of our retreat is we understand that as a system, as a board, as institutions that make up this system, it is absolutely necessary for us to focus on meeting the expectations that have been established for us by the state of Tennessee, and particularly by you, Governor. And we understand that if Tennessee is to be successful in a global environment, a global economy, if citizens of Tennessee are to enjoy the full participation in that economy that we seek for them, it's really going to be because we in the Tennessee Board of Regents and our institutions are successful in raising education attainment levels of Tennesseans. There is another system in Tennessee. We're the biggest one. We're the one that is in 95 or 90 of the 95 counties. We're the one that has over 200,000 students that we're responsible for and we work with on an annual basis. And if Tennessee is to be successful, it will be because we have met our challenge as a Board of Regents. We cover the state. We cover the full spectrum of educational opportunity from technology centers, and I know you had what I thought was a great visit at the Nashville Technology Center last week, where we deliver opportunity for Tennesseans who want specific skills, certificates, diplomas that are related to occupation. Community colleges, where we do a significant amount of workforce preparation and training, and academic 2-year programs to our universities, where we do the full array of bachelor's programs and graduate programs. All across the state, we offer these programs and offer opportunity to Tennesseans to do what they need to do in order to be players in this economy. Yesterday, we did have an opportunity as a board to meet in an informal setting, to really think about what we do and how we do it, trying to make sure that we're aligned with your goals, with the goals of the state of Tennessee, with the goals that THEC has laid out for us in the public agenda, that for the first time maybe clearly defines what higher education's role is in meeting the state's needs, particularly economic development needs. And I'm glad to report that we are in fact aligned. we are aligned and focused and committed to the goals that are in Complete College and the goals for our state that you have articulated. Much work remains to be done. Coming out of that session, we have several action items, but as a staff that supports this board, that supports our institutions, it's a good thing to know where we're going and to know that we're all going in the same direction. So I can report to you, Governor, and to those in the audience that we're ready to move. We're positioned to be successful. We are focused on student success, and everything we do as a board, everything we do as institutions is all about making Tennessee successful because of successful students. With that, Mr. Vice Chair, that is my report. I'd be happy to answer any questions or would invite anybody here to add to that in terms of their perceptions of our retreat.
Any comments from any region members regarding the Chancellor's report? Hearing none. Thank you, Chancellor Morgan, for your report. I will underscore again for the Governor's benefit, this volunteer board did engage in 8+ hours of work yesterday that I, as Vice Chair, was personally pleased with the time and commitment that was taken on their part in trying to work forward on the strategic plan and the alignment of the goals. There are a few more items prior to moving into new business we would like to cover. The next is the report of the presidents of our institution and director of our Tennessee Technology Centers. We, at each meeting, will have one president from the community colleges, the universities, as well as the director from the director from the Technology Center, give us an update and a report. And from the Technology Centers, we have Director Carol Purrier to give us a brief report. Dr. Purrier.
Good morning.
Morning.
Oh, no, it's not that early. But I want to say good morning and certainly welcome Governor Haslam, Vice Chair Duggett, board members, chancellors, Chancellor Morgan, and colleagues. On behalf of the Technology Centers, I'd like to call your attention to the newsletter. And Carol, do they have that? Yes. And while you're getting that, I'll just continue to talk. In the newsletter, you'll see that we have 12 students, finalists, that have been highlighted for the statewide TTC Outstanding Student Award. And this is, of course, one of our favorite activities. The students have competed on their local campuses, as well as at regional campuses, and they truly represent the best of the best across the state. And I don't think that's the cover story, that's the governor, and we'll talk about him in just a minute. Excuse me.
Please don't tell anybody how I did on that computerized welding course.
Well, now we can strike a deal. We can get a deal going here. I heard you did very well.
Yeah.
We are already reaping the benefits from the Outstanding Student Program. 2 of these fine young students have already talked with legislators, as well as 1 student presented to a statewide conference on counselors in Murfreesboro. So they're doing exactly what we wanted them to do, be ambassadors for this system. As you read through the stories, you'll see a common theme. Students overcoming personal issues that they have, as well as professional obstacles to prepare them for a better life through technical education. I don't envy the state judges because, from what I understand, the competition is very stiff. These are all fine students representing our system. They are the best of the best, and I know that whoever has to judge this competition will work very hard, but we're looking forward to that. The award will be next month, so you'll hear and probably meet the outstanding student in June. By the way, our current outstanding student, Ryan Peters, who's from TTC Whiteville, spoke at the Senate Education Committee this week about his experiences with the technology centers and what he hopes to do in his future. And he did an outstanding job. We were very, very proud of him. The TTCs are continuing to receive national and local attention. Last month, Vice Chancellor King was interviewed by Ed South regarding the important role of technical education and how it plays such an important role in workforce development. Jamie Massarto, from the President and CEO of the Lumina Foundation, spoke to the Senate Education Committee regarding the Tennessee Complete College Initiative, and while he discussed many things that we're doing right in Tennessee and some things he hopes that we can work on to improve, he also talked about the technology centers and their completion rate and how he didn't really talk about the technology centers in Tennessee because obviously we know about that, but he spoke about how he tells other states what the technology centers are doing and how they're meeting their completion goals, and we were very proud of that. And now, Governor Haslam, we will talk about the front page of the newsletter that has your photo on it. Governor Haslam, First Lady Haslam, the Labor and Workforce Development Commissioner Carla Davis joined Chancellor Morgan, Vice Chancellor King, and Director Lentz for a tour of the TTC Nashville Center. And you just jump in at any time, okay? The tour focused on the important...
I'm just hoping that the results of my welding test aren't subject to public records.
No, sir. I think as a guest student, that would be covered under FERPA. I think you're good. I think you're good. But the tour focused on the importance of the workforce development and the role that the TTCs play in providing such training. The group visited with students and faculty, and I think that was probably your favorite part of the day, talking to the students. The governor commented on the technology center, that the technology centers are doing great work and that they're improving the real labor force training for our employers. Specifically, he said, when you have an 80% completion rate and about an 80% placement rate, that's a really good track record. And I'm a fan of what's taking place here, and I want to see us do more of that. Is that a pretty good quote?
Pretty good.
Okay, good. Other highlights include over 450 TTC employees participated in numerous in-service activities during the month of March. The activities ranged from new faculty orientation, curriculum updates, etc. There were numerous activities held across the state, and it was a wonderful, wonderful opportunity for faculty and staff to come together from Memphis to Elizabethton. During that time, we had our first TTC leadership meeting where we had chosen 15 representatives of the state to participate in the TTC leadership program, and they had their first meeting during in-service week as well, and that went great. Our campuses have been very busy with service learning projects, from landscaping community centers, hosting car check clinics, participating in recycling programs, partnering with secondary schools to host Skills USA events, and we have served hundreds, I'll say, during the last 4 months of special industry students during the last few months, plus graduating students doing what we're supposed to be doing. We've been very, very busy. Several TTCs have received diversity grants, and I believe they'll talk about that a little later. In closing, I just want to highlight a student from TTC Morristown, since we're in their area. TTC Morristown had a student who graduated from their machining program, and while the training that he received there, he went on and he has been offered to participate in an apprenticeship program with Haas Master Apprenticeship Program. That's quite an honor, and it is very competitive to do that. Things are going very well if he is accepted into the program, and we're feeling pretty good about it because they've told him to look for a new house. So I think that's a good indication, but I don't want to jinx it. He will spend 18 to 24 months on hands-on training with one of the leaders in the manufacturing machining industry. And that's quite an honor to go from Morristown's training program all the way to California and have those opportunities. So that sounds exciting for that particular student. We graduate students every single day, literally, with our open entry, open exit programs. And this is just another example of the TTC students receiving education that will open doors to opportunities that without technical education they would have never had. His life will be changed forever. We continue to change lives daily, and provide technical education in a quality manner in a short amount of time, and make the biggest difference for those students and our partners in industry. So visit us when you're driving past us and stop in and let us hear from you. And I am open to any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Director Puryear? Hearing none?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yes. Next, we have for the report regarding community colleges, the President of Northeast, President Gilliam.
Good morning, Chair of TBR and Governor Haslam, welcome. Vice Chair Duckett, Regents, Chancellor Morgan, TBR staff, and I'd like to recognize Representative Scotty Campbell, who has joined us this morning. Would you stand?
Oh, okay, good.
Welcome. I'm reporting on behalf of President Nichols, who is not able to attend today because his wife is having surgery, and I hope that goes well. First of all, we'd like to, as community colleges, TBR, we'd like to express our appreciation, Governor Haslam, for your good work on the budget. In these hard times, we know how difficult it is to come up with funds and to meet everybody's needs, but we are very appreciative, and we especially appreciate the proposed raise for our employees. Very much appreciated. Our community colleges are working together as a consortium through the new DOL proposal grant, the C3T Trade Assistance Grant, to implement high demand certificates. We are exploring several topics including energy distribution, health informatics, hospitality and management, industrial process control, logistics and supply chain and demand. And we're very excited about this grant, and this could bring in a potential of $20 million or up to $20 million to our community colleges. I was able to attend the White House Community College Summit on Wednesday this week in Indianapolis, and we are right on target in community colleges as we respond to the Complete College America Act and the Complete College Tennessee Act. Each of our colleges are working hard to increase access, retention, the number of graduates, as well as affordability. Our focus on personal attention to students, pride in the quality and value of a community college education, getting people on our campus through marketing and other events, and to make it easier for potential students to access information about the community college through marketing. And we're also partnering with our high schools, the universities, our technology centers, our community, and our business and industry. For more specific details on what's happening in community colleges, please refer to your newsletter, and I'd like to open the floor for any questions.
Thank you, President Gilliam. Are there any questions? Okay.
Again, Governor, it's great to have you here.
Thank you. Yes. Next on the agenda is President Shirley Raines, representing the four-year institutions, President of the University of Memphis.
Good morning. Good morning, Governor. Good morning, Vice Chancellor Duckett, Regents, and Chancellor Morgan, our colleagues from across the state. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of the university presidents. We, too, would like to echo, we know that there's a lot of hard work that's gone into your proposed budget for this year to the legislature, and we're grateful for, particularly for salary increases that are proposed and for the health benefits. That's playing well on our campuses. We're all struggling with the budget issues and are going around our campuses trying to look at ways that we can create efficiencies while still increasing the demands for graduating more students. So that is the challenge for us, and in order to accomplish it, we must have all our campuses, all the people on our campuses working together. So that's where we are now, while our students are knocking on our doors every day to say, what's the tuition situation going to be like for next year? So those are the demands that are facing us. But we also have a lot to celebrate. Most of our colleges and universities in 2011 and 2012 are celebrating 100 years. And that's 100 years of graduating productive citizens. And we started, most of us, as teacher education colleges. And in these days, when teacher education and the performance of teachers in classrooms is much reviewed, we're excited that we can have an opportunity through TBR to be instrumental in the changes that make a real difference in our students learning more and our students who graduate being able to have the children they teach to accomplish more. But springtime is also a time when people come back to college campuses, not only for graduation ceremonies, which are wonderful, but also to look back at the history of what's gone on. And in your newsletter, you'll hear and read some of the things that are going on. But just to highlight a few, we're very privileged to have made changes in Tennessee to educate more students, particularly minority students, and more minority students go to TBR institutions than to any other. And ETSU is celebrating some of their first undergraduates to graduate and welcome them back. Three out of the six first black undergraduates. We in Memphis have the Memphis State 8 that we celebrate and have them back on campus regularly. But it's wonderful when you can get people back on campus to give $8 million like President Stanley had at ETSU, but at MTSU, another alum has come back to campus this spring to give $1 million to endow scholarships. And that's Ken Shipp, who was a longtime college football coach. At Tennessee State University, you'll notice that they've just received the Carnegie Community Engaged Scholarship announcement. And that means that they're being recognized for the work that they do in communities. That's very important because all of the Tennessee Board of Regents schools are highly engaged in communities. The University of Memphis is one of those as well, but it's important to note that we're being recognized by the Carnegie Corporation. That's quite an important award for all of us. If you'll look at what's happening at Tennessee Technology University, another important avenue for us is being acknowledged this spring when you have an engineering doctoral student from Africa who is coming back to Tennessee Technology University for the purposes of receiving an award in chemical engineering. We're also well known, particularly in the last few years, for what we've been doing for international students. So to have international students come back to campus to receive doctoral awards is another spring event that means a lot to us. You can read about the University of Memphis, and I'm very honored to have Julie Heath, another person being recognized by the Carnegie Corporation for her work on a statewide effort in financial literacy. She was one of only 46 professors in the U.S. to receive this award for outstanding teaching. And at Austin Peay, again, welcoming back is the theme here, welcoming home the Fort Campbell troops to Austin Peay State University, the university that has the closest connection, I think, with our military service people. So in the spring, we have a lot to celebrate, a lot of challenges as we deal with budgets and deal with what the future may bring, but a lot to celebrate. And that's sort of the theme that goes along with graduation and awards to alumni and thankfulness to donors. So on behalf of the college and university presidents, welcome to the board, Governor, and to the new regents, but also to let you know we're facing our challenges, but we're remembering to celebrate the good things that are happening to us all across the state. Thank you. Any questions, Mr. Vice Chair?
Thank you, President Raines. Are there any questions of her?
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. moving on the agenda, there are a few quick items that we need to dispose of, one of which is under new business. There's one consent item which requires a voice vote. That item, as you are aware, and from the agenda, is the proposed program termination modifications and new technical program implementation. I would accept a motion to approve that. It's been moved by Regent Ferris. Is there a second? Second. A second by Regent Varlin. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by aye. Aye. Opposes the same. Thank you. We are technically at this time supposed to go into some informational reports of the on our agenda. The first of which is the report regarding the budget. In light of some scheduling issues, I would like to hold those reports, if at all possible, and move forward on the agenda for the to new business, which as it relates to new business, as I said at the start of the meeting, Tennessee statute provides for certain specific individuals to serve on this board, in addition to Commissioner of Agriculture and Commissioner of Education. The governor, as you are aware, serves on this board. It has been the tradition of this body to elect a chairman for this board. And at this time, I would like to yield and call on Regent Griscom, if he would, to make a nomination for chair of the Tennessee Board of Regents.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. I appreciate the honor to put in the nomination the name of the governor, 49th governor of the state of Tennessee. And in doing so, to highlight a couple things very quickly. This governor has already indicated his keen interest in raising the educational standards across this state, talking about giving all students an opportunity to quality education, and that means from K all the way through wherever somebody wants to go. But he also has set a real challenge to make sure that we do increase the number of Tennesseans who have a college degree. I think those are all challenges that we talked about yesterday, and I think, Governor, we're prepared to work with you to meet those challenges. So it is my distinct pleasure and honor to put into nomination as chairman of the Board of Regents, the Honorable Bill Haslam.
Thank you. You've heard the nomination from Regent Griscom. I will, from a parliamentary procedure, ask if are there any other nominations?
You want me to go behind the curtain?
Everyone will note I looked at our board secretary and corporate and staff counsel as I said that, because I knew she was going to remind me of that. But any discussions related to the nomination?
Move that they close and elect them by acclamation.
Okay, it has been moved that the election is approved by acclamation. All in favor signify by aye. Aye. Opposes, the same sign. Congratulations. I would like to yield the program or the podium to you, Governor and Chair, if there are any comments you would like to make to us as well as the public.
I would, first of all, thank you very much for the honor, and my resume is looking a little better lately. But actually, on a very serious note, I very much appreciate, I noted you said this all-volunteer board, and I realize the time required, and I realize at times it puts you in the line of fire for something that you're not getting paid for. but we greatly appreciate the way you're serving. And it's really important what you're doing, and I know you know that, but as we look at the challenges facing Tennessee, the schools of the Tennessee Board of Regents are really critical to what we're trying to do in Tennessee. And I'll give you a little picture of that in two ways. In the last 9 days, I was thinking, I've been to the University of Memphis, where Dr. Raines agreed to kind of lead a consortium of folks working with University of Tennessee and St. Jude and other major research partners in Memphis to help increase the number of research jobs and the research capacity and product coming out of Memphis, and took the lead there. This week earlier, I was at Austin Peay, where they formed a great partnership with Hemlock, one of our huge new employers, in terms of an on-campus training facility that's already seeing incredible placement rates, and the kind of partnership we want between private business and higher education. As it was noted, I was at the Technology Center in Nashville this week. Incredibly impressed with the practical application that's happening there and the way we're providing job opportunities for our citizens, but as important, providing great talent going into the companies. And then today at Northeast State, and Dr. Gilman, it's great to be back here. I will say it's more fun. The last time I was on this stage, I was part of a 4-person debate in the race for governor, and it's much more fun to be here as the chair of the Tennessee Board of Regents than it was to be here. No offense, that was wonderful for you to host, but it's much more fun being back here, and Dr. Gibbons has been nice to host us. But again, continuing that idea of why it's such a strategic role, Northeast State has played a key role in a partnership that the area economic development folks have with local K-12 educators, again, trying to prepare workforce. They've taken the lead in everything from dual enrollment programs to distance learning. Again, very practical application of what we're trying to do. The challenge, as Tom said in the nomination, is really is big in Tennessee. We're way behind the national average in the percentage of our adult population over the age of 25 with a degree. Specifically, we're at 21%. The national average is about 30%. And that challenge would be big enough if you just compared us to the rest of the country. But we're not just competing with the rest of the country, we're competing with the world. And in the last 20 years, just a period from 1990 to 2010, the U.S. as a country has gone from being the first in the world percentage of population with a degree to 9th in 20 years, okay? Within that, we're, 35, 40% behind the national average in a nation that is sinking fast in the percentage of population with a degree. So, incredible challenge, and we're asking you to help us on that at a time when admittedly, we're giving you less funds to do that with. And we understand the challenge. It mirrors the challenge we have in a lot of areas of state government, but it's a big one. It's why this board is so important. I did take the time. Chancellor was nice to send me the plan for what you worked on yesterday, and I was thrilled to see the measurement data that you have in there, the specific missions by school. I think that's just the right track that we need to be on. If we're going to compete. Also, while we're working at increasing that number, the percentage of our adult population with a degree, we recognize that a 4-year degree is not for everyone. And I've been incredibly impressed with the way our 2-year schools and our technology centers are seeing themselves in the workforce development business, and in a very practical way. I'd love those of you, I know the Regents have, but those who haven't, to go around and visit the schools around the state and see how they're adapting. I'm thinking that Chattanooga State and their partnership with Volkswagen and with TVA down there. I can go on and on by institution of the way they're adapting, but that's what we have to have happen. So I guess my charge to the board is, and I do want to be an active participant as much as possible, is this won't look the same 5 years from now, and it can't look the same. And we need the brain power and the talent and the market experience that's assembled at this table to help us understand how we adapt the Regent system as we go forward. We recognize the challenge, and when Shirley got up and talked about the financial challenges facing everyone, we realize that the numbers at large, and I say this so much that people get tired of hearing me say it, but the state this year, our total budget is $30.2 billion, which is a whole lot of money. until you consider that last year's budget was $32 billion. So we have $1.8 billion less to work with statewide, and we asked higher ed to take a 2% cut this year, which we would love to have not done because they have, quite frankly, borne the brunt of state budgets for the last several years. And we'd love to see that in, but given the situation we're in with $1.8 billion, we had no choice but to ask them to do that. I want to say one last thing before I end, and is this board, you're to be commended, the leaders are. Higher ed sometimes has a reputation of not being real adaptable and not changing, but the way that the leaders of all the 4-year and the 2-year schools have adopted to the budget challenges has quite frankly been amazing. They are all dealing with less funds, not just a little bit, but quite a bit less than they had 3 or 4 years ago. And people say, well, higher ed is just kind of a rigid bureaucratic system. But I've seen them adapt to that and make the adjustments as they saw the cliff that we all saw coming, as they saw it coming, and make those changes. And we want to help you in that process. I'd love to tell you the world's going to look really different 2 or 3 years from now, but I don't think it is. And so that's why I think the adjustments that we've made have been important, and it's why the leadership of this Board of Regents is so critical. So thank you very much. I look forward to, as much as possible, being an active chair. And again, I want to thank you for serving. I realize, like I said, it's the pay's not very good at all, and the heat you take is definitely not worth it unless you realize how critical and strategic this is to what happens in the future of the state. And I'll end by saying this. My day-to-day started with breakfast with a group of K-12 educators here in Sullivan County, about 15 or 20, and a great discussion. And I just left a group of economic development professionals, business folks, and local elected people talking about job creation. And to be here now, there's a really good symmetry to my day as we understand both the challenges facing Tennessee in terms of making it the best location in the Southeast for high-quality jobs, but also what is happening along the steps to build those, to build the ladder to get us where we need to. So thank you very, very much for being willing to serve, and I look forward to working with you. Thank you, Vice Chairman.
Thank you. Let me thank you, Governor. We appreciate, again, your time, and we understand that there's only one of you, and there are thousands of issues throughout the community, and we pledge to work with you as well as members of your team to advance the educational goals of this community. What I would like to ask, briefly, if at all possible, if the members of the board as well as the governor could move forward. I think we're supposed to move to the front of the stage. We're going to take a group photo before you exit, and then we'll resume with the agenda. Yep. Given that we did not go into a formal recess, we'll go ahead and convene or proceed with the existing meeting. I do want to acknowledge what I think everyone heard and underscore my personal pride that the governor placed on the work that the directors, the presidents, and staff members of the institutions are doing in these lean times as it relates to trying to educate students. So I do think not only is his mind in the right place, but his heart is there as well. So we look forward to working with him in that regard. And again, I'm just glad he took time to come by to let us know education is important, and he wants to be a part of that process. And I think you saw that when he talked about the start of his day with K through 12 and then here with us. I've been shuffling sheets on my agenda, and one of the issues that actually we have already covered, I will accept responsibility. I did not call on a member of the region, and that was the approval of the fees. And Regent McCollum had asked if she could be acknowledged because as the student regent, she has worked with various campus leaders and talked about the fee and wanted to share with us some of the concerns that has been expressed to her. So at this time, unless there's objection by a member of the committee, I would turn to Regent McCollum to give us that update.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I'd first just like to take a minute to say two things. The first is to thank Dale Sims and his staff for the hard work that has gone into these proposals. And second, I had asked them to include a student exposure to proposal section for mandatory fees in attachment A that we have in the books. And while I was reviewing the results, I was disappointed to see that there was an overwhelming majority of our campuses that had not attempted to consult the students or their SGAs. Ralph Waldo Emerson had said that the secret in education lies in respecting the student. And part of respecting them is telling them what's going on. And I hope that the board and chancellor will set an expectation for our institutions to consult with students from now on.
Thank you, Regent McCollum.
Vice Chairman, I just
Yes.
want to commend Regent McCollum for her hard work on the committee and
Yes,
participating with us and her input.
yes. That's echoed. Thank you. All right. We now move into the new business portion of our agenda, which covers several items. The first is informational update as it relates to an overview of the governor's budget by Vice Chancellor Sims.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. First, let me say I'm glad that the governor is not here. Presenting another man's work is often challenging, but it's somebody that can actually fact-check you. As all of you know, the governor did present his budget recommendations on March 14th. The chancellor transmitted information, a narrative to each of you on the 15th. That information is in your board books behind the new business informational items. My purpose today is briefly to overview those recommendations, and I would echo several of the comments that have been made. Given the state's financial condition, there's much for us to be excited about as a system within these budget recommendations. It certainly is a better budget than we have seen over the last several years, notwithstanding the fact that we are continuing to see some level of reduction. Again, the purpose, though, is to provide you some brief background, particularly on the operating side. Before I move there, I will say capital outlay. We don't have a slide in here. The capital outlay position is the same position we've been in for several years, where there is no outlay money. However, on our capital maintenance side, we're receiving a little bit more than we received last year, almost $31 million that will cover our top 26 maintenance priorities. The slide that you have in front of you is one I'll focus on for a few minutes. You'll see slides similar to this in your information for our universities, community colleges, technology centers, specialized units. Those are our medical units and our research units at Tennessee State, and then the central office. The way that this table is set up is you have a presentation of the recurring funding across the top, the non-recurring funding, and then what the total appropriation would be. Down the left-hand side, the first row is our starting point. Where are we in the current fiscal year? The very next line it basically shows you the withdrawal of the non-recurring state funding that has been serving as a bridge for the system over the last 2 fiscal years. It clearly shows that we are losing that non-recurring funding, but it did provide our institutions an opportunity to adapt to the new reality. The next item, the third item there, the hold harmless phase out. As we've talked before, the new formula, one of the features, it's not of the new formula per se, but one of the side effects of the new formula was a separate policy decision to eliminate the hold harmless agreement feature of the old formula. That has the impact of shifting state funding around among institutions. The governor's budget, and I think as a system, this has been a marvelous thing. The governor's proposal to, again, provide us non-recurring money for our institutions, particularly those that are losing funding as a result of the removal of the hold harmless, to, again, create that glide path, an opportunity for a glide path to full implementation of that removal of the hold harmless. The governor's budget envisions $15 million for this purpose. The Regents system, as you can see, benefits to the tune of a little over $14.2 million. So that dollar shifting primarily does hit our institutions. University of Memphis, special challenges there. Roane State and Southwest in our community college sector, particularly challenges there. And I believe that this funding is a much better resolution than what we were originally faced with. The next line is the outcome formula phase-in. As most of you are aware, that is being phased in over a 3-year period of time. This line represents the first year of that phase-in. Group insurance funds, there was a open enrollment, so to speak, in the fall of last year. There were also changes in our premium schedules that resulted in increased employer match funds. This is a number that represents funding for those items. Line 6, 2% reduction. You can see from a system-wide standpoint right at $13 million in terms of reductions. 401k match is a small non-recurring item. The state's recurring budget envisions a match at $40 per month. This is money to allow an additional $10 so that total match can be $50. The 1.6% salary increase, one of the items we'll talk about later, is compensation challenges. The governor was reading our minds. This addresses several of the challenges we have and is a good step in remediating those challenges. Again, the governor on line 9, he mentioned the research consortium, the Memphis Research Consortium. He was able to appropriate, or has recommended appropriation of $10 million for that entity, and that is reflected on that total line. When you look at the bottom line, the percentage change, what we gain, what we lose, our recurring budgets, and I need to say our recurring budgets have basically been the same recurring budgets over the last several years as we've stepped down. So we see a minimal increase, about a 0.7% increase. The big action is in that non-recurring, and again, not a surprise to us. We knew those non-recurring dollars were going away. Again, I won't, Carol will flip through this pretty quickly. The universities, you can see that I'll highlight the hold harmless item. You can see that our universities benefit significantly from the governor's plan to phase in the hold harmless withdrawal to the tune of $8.7 million. Our universities in gross is the 2% reduction on line 8, or I'm sorry, on line 6 is $6.8 million. On community colleges, comparable numbers, you can see again a significant benefit for our community colleges in terms of that hold harmless phase out line. And then their 2% reduction number on line 6 is $4.3 million. Still a significant number for them to deal with. Our technology centers, the hold harmless line, they are a winner in the hold harmless removal, and they get the immediate benefit of that to the tune of $6.2 million. Again, I should say the governor's plan for phasing out the hold harmless also results in institutions that gain funds through that to get immediate use of those funds as opposed to it being phased out over a longer period of time. Technology centers as a group then will take a $1.3 million reduction in their recurring funding. Specialized units, very important units for us. Again, primarily the medical school, the medical units here at ETSU, and the TSU land grant research units. The 2% reduction number there is a relatively small number, and as you can see, the salary increase number, again, relatively small. And then your central office, the elimination of the non-recurring is primarily in our access and diversity grant area. You can see that we in the central office will be planning for an additional reduction of $120-some thousand, but we also have the funding for the salary increase. Going forward, as most of you are aware, this is the opening of a long series of deliberations. I shouldn't say long, potentially shorter than in past years. It is, though, a beginning of discussions among legislators as they examine the governor's budget proposal. The chancellor will end up appearing before several legislative committees discussing the budget recommendations before those committees. I don't think I surprised him there. At the end of the day, we will end up adapting to whatever the governor's final recommendations are. For our institutions, though, you should be aware that when we send out our budget instructions to them in the next few weeks, the governor's recommendations as to distribution of state funds will form the basis of their budget planning activities that will result in you reviewing proposed budgets in June of this year for next fiscal year. Mr. Chairman, Vice Chairman, I've tried to be brief. I'll be glad, though, to stand for any questions members might have.
Thank you, Vice Chancellor Sims. Are there any questions of Vice Chancellor Sims as it relates to the overview of the governor's proposed budget? Seeing none, we want to move to the next item regarding system compensation challenges.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Again, this item is in your board materials. We really don't have slides on it, and there is I think it's 4, 5, 6 page memo. I don't intend to read it all to you, just the first 3 pages. The memo it's right behind your budget materials. You'll recall that we have talked with the board on several occasions now about compensation challenges. At your December meeting, you asked that we consult with our institutions, gather information from them as to specific challenges. What are they seeing out there? What keeps them awake at night in terms of compensation and staffing issues? We have engaged in a series of conversations with institutions since that time, and what is before you in your transmittal is the result of that. Emphasize, we're not asking for action on this today. This is another update item, particularly given that the governor has recommended an allocation of funding for salary adjustments. We will engage again in conversations, I believe, with legislators about their desires, how they would perceive this being distributed with the administration and with our institutions, with the goal being that we address the issues that we see at institutions in as adequate a fashion as we can. Compensation challenges, probably no surprise on the first page. One of the first challenges that we're beginning to see, recruiting and retaining staff, particularly high-skilled staff. It is not uncommon, or I should say it's becoming a more common practice, that we can go through a search, and virtually all the positions that we retain individuals into are the result of a search. We'll get to the end of that search, which can be a 60, 90-day process. We'll arrive at the candidate that we wish to extend an offer to. We'll make them an offer that fits within our compensation plan at an institution, and be turned down because the compensation is not viewed as adequate in that person's mind. So we're beginning to see that somewhat more frequently. I should say compensation plans, each of our institutions has one. They are generally tied to some share of market. Rarely are they tied to 100% of market. Usually it is some share, 85, 90, 95% of market. So we're not at market per se with most of the plans to begin with. So that is increasingly becoming a challenge for us. TTCs in particular, in discussions with Vice Chancellor King, Many of the individuals who serve as instructors in our technology centers are both skilled craftsmen and tradesmen as well as excellent instructors. As the economy turns around and as the demand for skilled tradesmen and craftsmen increase, that poses a direct threat to the retention of individuals who serve as instructors in technology centers. Related to both of those, hiring employees, new employees at higher salaries than incumbents. Of necessity, from time to time, you end up with that critical position where you've gone through your recruitment process, your search process, you've arrived at a candidate, they are the right person, the perfect person for that job. You make the offer that fits your compensation plan and they turn that offer down. The necessity is you need that person. So we from time to time, and increasingly so, are experiencing making offers that put that new person in a position where they are earning more than someone that may have been in a comparable job for some period of time. The downstream effect of that is a morale issue for persons that are in roughly the same types of positions, one receiving more compensation just because they happen to come to us at a point in time where we had to pay a market rate to attract that individual. Regent Fairs some time ago, related to this, had asked a question about turnover. We have gathered this information. I won't go through the details of this, but we have gathered information on turnover by institution, and there's information in this transmittal regarding that. We've also tried to put that in the context of a national picture. Quit rates, I would have never known until recently that the federal government, Department of Labor, keeps up with quit rates, which is essentially a calculation that represents the willingness of a person to change jobs voluntarily. There's a graph on page 2 of the transmittal that from 2006 to 2010 shows the quit rates. And you'll see in every category in terms of the total rate, educational services, and state and local government, those rates dropped dramatically from 2006 to 2009. The warning sign is they've begun to tick up. In all fairness and all candor, higher education, the quit rates, or the educational services quit rates, which are broader than higher education, they tend to be below the overall, the total rate. Makes some sense when you think about the total rate includes food services industry, lodging industry, places where a person will move across the street for a 10-cent per hour increase in pay. I think that is troubling. Maybe it is great in some fashion. Quit rates are going up. People see the labor market's turning around. They're more willing to leave one job for another. But from the standpoint of managing institutions, it is a little bit troubling and deserves attention in that we may be reaching that point in time where our highly qualified persons are more and more willing to leave our institutions for what they perceive as better opportunities. I will say that we have given you a picture of our voluntary termination, voluntary turnover rates for the 12 months ending June 30 of 2010 and for 12 months ending February 28th of 2011. While there's some volatility in that, 2/3 of our institutions saw a higher rate of turnover in that latter period than they did the prior period. We'll continue. I think that this is really the first time we've monitored it at a system level. We'll continue to monitor that. Although, as we've talked before, this tends to be a lagging indicator. By the time you understand you have a turnover rate problem, you really have a management problem. Moving on, one other feature of our current situation is the length of time since the last basic cost of living or across-the-board adjustment. Morale issues are rising as a result of that. They're being reported on our institutions. As many of you know, David Gregory could speak more to this than I, but we're seeing increased activism among certain employee organizations on our campuses that are particularly bringing these issues to light. Change in benefits cost. If I can ask you to turn to page 5, and I encourage you to read this material, but I think that this is significant. We have seen significant changes in our state health insurance program over the last several years, from 2009 2008 to 2011. There has been a premium restructuring, and there's been just a general cost escalation, notwithstanding benefit changes that occur, but there's been general cost escalation. What we've attempted to do at the top of page 5 is give you a picture of what impact has that had on individuals by various job classes. Our support personnel, I'll highlight them. The changes, if you are an employee and you are covering your spouse and your children through our health insurance plans, you have actually seen almost a 3% reduction in your take-home pay based upon the actions, valid actions, of the group insurance program and adjusting premiums. That effect is not uniform across all of our employee types due to the salary differentials involved, and it does vary. If you're an employee and only covering your children, you've actually seen a little bit of a bump, a little bit of an increase in your take-home pay. Just be aware that that is problematic in some of our employee classifications. Strategies to address, and I need to say that these are strategies are probably maybe in sequence order, but they are somewhat interrelated. The number one is really a cost of living adjustment, some sort of cost of living adjustment. And again, we give recognition and thanks to the governor for including it within his budget recommendations. Our institutions, in terms of addressing their problems, this does help the morale issues. It addresses the health insurance issues, maybe not fully, but helps address those. And it also helps move our compensation schedules closer to market. So it also addresses that recruitment and retainment issue depending on how that cost of living might be administered. Salary plans. I've mentioned our salary plans that are out there. Institutions believe that as a second prong, that there should be consideration to permitting full or partial funding of their salary plans. Again, that allows them to address particular market issues that they may have in particular positions. Also allows for equity where that new employee, we're able to move those longer-term employees at least to comparable levels to those newer folks that may have been recruited in and paid at market levels. The last element, there is a significant interest in recognizing the work of system employees over the last 3 years. There have been stressful times, challenging times. People have taken on additional duties without additional compensation in some sort of bonus strategy where there is some either flat level bonus, broad-based bonus that recognizes the effort employees have put forth over the last few years. Mr. Vice Chair, that again, I tried to be as brief as possible. We will continue to monitor some of the trends that we're seeing here. We'll continue to engage with the administration and with the legislature and with our institutions about the right mix of strategies. As part of that, we will keep particularly the Committee on Compensation and Personnel informed of those developments. And ultimately in June, hopefully come to you with some sort of plan as to how we tackle the problems that we see at our institutions with compensation. With that, Mr. Vice Chair, I'll be glad to respond to questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions regarding the system compensation challenges report? Yes, sir.
Just one thing. Dale, it'd be interesting to see what impact you will pick up after the governor's 1.6% request for that, because when you look at some of these, clearly they appear to have been engaged without a salary increase for some period of time, and while that's not a large amount, it'd be interesting to see if you pick up anything or some indicators there that help us as we look at this.
Thank you, Regent. That's a question we'll pursue.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? If not, thank you, Vice Chancellor Sims. Yes. Next item on the agenda is the report on legislative issues. There's a written report that has been passed out. I will ask Vice Chancellor Gregory to come forth if he has any updates to that report or if there's any additional information that we need on that issue.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. Good morning or afternoon. I don't really necessarily have any updates to the report. I'm happy to answer any questions. I would just say maybe a couple of things with respect to the legislative session. Probably they have not completed 50% of their work in terms of the numbers of bills that have been introduced, but probably just this past week have passed over about the 50% time for which I think they'll be in session. With the governor's budget being introduced, it now sort of creates a series of more rapid movements in the committees, as well as the budget hearings prior to the appropriations bill being sort of fully vetted through the committees. We now have our dates for which we will appear before the Finance and Education Committee, which Vice Chancellor Sims referred to. April 6th is our date to appear before the Senate Education Committee. April 22nd, I believe, is our date to appear before the House Finance, Ways and Means Committee to discuss our budget. I'm sorry. Can you? Let me start it. I'm going to try again. General Assembly is probably not 50% through doing their work in terms of the amount of bills that have been introduced, but have passed over about the halfway point of their legislative session in terms of when they hope to be able to adjourn. With the governor's budget having now been introduced, it will be vetted through the finance committees and the various standing committees in the Senate. We have our dates for which we will appear before the Senate Education Committee as well as the finance committees. I believe the date for Senate Day, and I need to verify this with you, is April the 6th, Senate Education Committee, and then April the 22nd, I believe, is the House Finance, Ways and Means Committee. Generally, for those of you who haven't seen this process before, that will not just be the Board of Regents, but it will also be all of higher education, including the Higher Education Commission, as well as the University of Tennessee system. Happy to answer any questions you might have about the session in general or about the report specific.
Are there, Regent Roddy, excuse me.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Vice Chancellor Gregory, in regards to the guns on campus, currently our campuses have rules, guidelines, regulations pertaining to carrying firearms on campus. Are the legislators that have introduced these bills aware of the Board of Regents' current policy in that regards? And if these bills pass, I presume they would override the board, the campuses. Are they aware of, would there be liability we would face in the event of accidents that happen on campus around firearms as a result of this legislation if it passes?
Answer to your first question, I do believe they are aware of our position. This type of legislation, this is probably the third consecutive session where we've seen this bill or something similar to it introduced, so we've sort of been consistently on the record as opposing the guns on campus legislation. And our main reason for that has been trying to listen as carefully as we can to our public safety officers. There is an association of police chiefs that meet, and there's a subcommittee that not only our police chiefs, but also the police chiefs for the private institutions and others meet and discuss these kinds of items. They have consistently taken the position in opposition, believing that public safety is better served by the licensed personnel, trained personnel being the ones who have who are armed. So I believe they are aware of our position. These bills have not been calendared as of yet, but remains to be seen whether or not they will be actively pursued. Did I answer all of your questions, or would you have?
Well,
okay.
In particular, the provision in House Bill 2014 that would allow the head of institutions, I presume our presidents, to issue a directive to faculty to carry a handgun on campus upon completing firearm training.
Yeah.
What if you had a chaplain on campus? Could that person be directed by the head, the president of that institution, and if for ethical, religious reasons they refused, what position would that put the board in?
Yeah. Let me say that the feature of having an institutional president direct members or authorize members to carry handguns is a new feature of any of the legislation we've seen in past years. And I just note with you that bill also bears with it something called the duty of care provision, which does give us some serious concern about liability issues if we were not in strict compliance with the legislation. So yeah, that particular legislation raises some liability concerns for us.
If there is a hearing, would it be possible that presidents or our campus police could be there to testify, maybe our counsel in terms of the liability, just so to ensure that they had the facts?
Yeah. That is possible, and that's been the strategy that we have pursued in years past. I'd like for you to know we've got some very distinguished people across our system in the world of public safety. Bruce Harbor at the University of Memphis. I hate to start singling people out because I will forget some folks, but Jack Cottrell at the East Tennessee State University, Buddy Peaster at Middle Tennessee. All these gentlemen have distinguished themselves within their profession in terms of their training. I do believe they're up to speed on the most latest techniques in terms of what you do in disaster type situations. And quite frankly, legislators like to hear from them more than they like to hear from me on a subject like that because they've got subject matter expertise. So I plan to meet with them this week. They have their regularly scheduled meeting with the Tennessee Association of Police Chiefs. I plan to sit with them and discuss this matter with them in terms of how they want to approach testimony. But that would be our strategy in terms of letting them hear specifically from the people who have had the training.
And David, lastly, if you would just mention, we received communications from Middle Tennessee State University that they're implementing conflict resolution courses and training for faculty, staff, as a way of avoiding situations where you feel you'd need a firearm, more peaceful ways to resolve conflict. Make sure they're aware of, the legislature's aware of efforts like that to prevent getting to the point that anyone felt they'd need a firearm.
Good point. Excellent point.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions or comments? If not, let's move to the next item, which is an update on the capital outlay list, which also is a written report. But are there any updates, Vice Chancellor Gregory, on that?
I might just say this to you. When you approve the special capital outlay for community colleges, you also approved the ability to modify the capital outlay list pursuant to those projects ultimately being pursued and approved by the State Building Commission. This is the result of that. I just wanted the board to be able to see the movement on the list as it relates to being able to move the projects off that were specifically funded through the special capital outlay for community colleges. If I might, Mr. Chairman, I would just point out to you under that item, we were able to remove item number 2, which is the Southwest Nursing and Biotech facility, because it received funding through the special capital outlay program, as well as our previous project number 6, which was the Tennessee Technology Center Clarksville Industrial Training Facility. Also project number 9, which is the Motlow State Rutherford County Teaching Site Expansion. Also, I would just point out to you that project number 12, Jackson State Health Sciences Building, received funding through the special capital outlay to build a nursing facility. What we'd like to do with that particular project is leave it on the capital outlay project because it was a much larger project than we were able to fund, and then once that project is underway, to be able to make a further evaluation of the size needed for that project. So I just wanted the board members to see the movement on the list as a result of these projects being funded.
Thank you. Any questions regarding the capital outlay list? Thank you, Vice Chancellor.
Sure.
Next item is the report on our system diversity plan. I would call on Vice Chancellor Thompson to give us an update.
Thank you, Vice Chair Duckett, Chancellor, Regents, and let me be the first to officially say good afternoon. With the charge to increase the number of people with post-secondary credentials known nationally as the BOLD goal. You got the good afternoon part though, right? Okay, I'll proceed. With the charge to increase the number of people with post-secondary credentials, which is known nationally as the BOLD goal, and in Tennessee as Complete College, we understand that we must reach out to and bring in a diverse group of people, and we must be prepared to help them succeed. With that in mind, we've charged our institutions to create diversity plans that align with goals and objectives of their strategic plans and complete college planning. In other words, the new framework is diversity planning to advance the completion agenda. We also worked with the TTCs to develop their first system-wide diversity plan. You have a lot of information in your notebooks about the process, and I talked to you briefly about the process at the December board meeting. So I thought today that it'd be important for you to hear from people who are actually doing the work. And so I've asked Dr. Gary Goff to talk with you, and I had asked Shelley Travis to talk with you from the TTCs, but she couldn't make it, so you get James King. And so I'm going to yield the remainder of my time to Gary Goff and to James King to talk with you about their diversity planning efforts, and then I will stand for questions. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair, Regents, Chancellor, and my colleagues. I've been asked to really describe to you what all 19 of your colleges and universities, the process they've gone to develop a access and diversity strategic plan. So I will share some of the things and the processes that we all have gone through using Rhone States as a model as a discussion point with you. Obviously, next slide please. We wanted to make sure that our plan, our diversity plan, has a direct linkage to our strategic plan. And so we wanted to make sure that linkages were there. We wanted it to be aspirational of what we wanted to do and try to have some realistic goals and measurements and be able to improve what we're doing every day on all kinds of different areas across our universities and colleges to bring aboard a better diversity opportunities for all Tennesseans. And we wanted to look at, we're all uniquely somewhat different, so the planning allows us to meet some of those uniquenesses of our service areas that we have and to our academic programs that we're offering, say, for our students. Next chart, please. It starts with kind of developing a mission statement for access and diversity. This was ours. Each of your 19 institutions have a unique mission statement for access and diversity, and we wanted to make sure that this mission statement linked with the broader overall college mission statement as well. Next chart. We basically asked ourselves 3 questions. All of us formed some type of task force or a working group or a committee to begin looking at this. And so some of the committee meetings that we established, we were really asking these kind of 3 questions. What are we missing now in the way of diversity on our campuses? How would we like to grow those populations of both our employees and students, and what is it that we want to grow? And lastly is, how can we realistically grow them? And I say this in my unique district, the demographics of 2010 census data for Rhone State's 8 counties indicates that I have 96% Caucasian and 4% diversity. So what should be a realistic goal in my service area for both recruiting students of color as well as employees of color to have that diversity? So you kind of have to take that regional uniqueness that we have to be able to look at what's possible. Next. We did a demographic study, and all of us, all 19 of your colleges and universities have done this, to know what is the ethnicity within our current structure of both students and employees, as well as what's inside our service area. We looked at them by ethnicity as well as majors. Are there majors that we need to open up to students? Are there other areas, career fields that we need to recruit heavily for if it was based on a gender imbalance? And then we developed some strategies, and then where we could make the greatest impact across the college is what's in our current plan. Next chart, please. We identified these populations that we are needing. What we were missing were these type of populations that we're pursuing. Your 19 colleges and universities may have a different population, but they again have identified those kind of populations that we need to pursue. Next chart, please. And then we've taken the step to link, and all of us, all 19 of your colleges, universities, have linked our internal access and diversity goals to the strategic goals that you have given us as the Regents for the strategic plan. And obviously those are the 4 broad categories, and I'm going to show a couple of slides real quickly of what the linkages are and how we've made those linkages. Next. In this case, to meet the access goal that you've required us, this is what our task force and what the college is moving forward on for our access and diversity goal to meet the access broad goal that you've established. Same with student services. I won't read those to you, but those are kind of what we have identified. Next is the next 2 of quality and resourcefulness and efficiency. Here's what the goals that we have established in our plan to line up with what you've tasked us to do in the strategic plan. Next. Here are some examples of what we've tried to do in linking those examples directly to the strategic plan. For instance, one of those goals that we've established is, one of the objectives is progression rate of priority subpopulations to meet or exceed established benchmarks. And this again is, what is the benchmark? In our case, we use the demographics of 2010 of what are the demographics within our 8-county service area. An example of population, students awarded degrees and certificates. So we wanted to make sure that we could increase those students of color and those other populations, such as males, at the same rate we're graduating other students. Next. This one related to the strategic plan, faces of our own state. We are doing magazines and some other kind of marketing to help us recruit those students within our service area, and we're calling this Faces of RSCC. And then we also are looking at enhancing the outreach to employees, both faculty, staff, and administrators, to make sure that we in fact have some recruiting initiatives for staffing the college. Next. We've made this plan a matrix, and I want to just kind of, these are some of the major elements of the matrix, but the next chart really shows you an actual matrix, which is an appendix to our plan. If you'll go to that, please. This is an actual matrix of what we're doing to actually track by year for the 2011 through 2015 year guidelines for the diversity plan. And so this is the type of process that we have put in place of all of your colleges and universities to actually create a viable, measurable, accountable access and diversity plan that you can make sure that you will have confidence that we'll be able to meet many of those goals that we've outlined in this document. And so with that, I complete my presentation of the process that all of us went through to build a diversity plan uniquely tailored to our university or college. Any questions that you may have? If not, thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Does that conclude your report? Or James, okay, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, and Chancellor, and the board. We'll try to give a brief overview because we went through a very similar process that Dr. Goff has discussed there for the TTCs. I hope I can do this plan justice since Assistant Vice Chancellor Shelley Travis originally prepared to do this report. And so I'm not going to say I'm unprepared, but I'm not as prepared maybe. This may be the first time that we've actually done a system-wide diversity plan. However, diversity has always been important to the campuses from Elizabethton to Memphis. Providing quality technical training to our underserved populations has always been part of the TTC strategic plan, because we've always focused on race, sex, non-traditional students in non-traditional programs, as well as serving students from lower socioeconomic backgrounds. A major goal of mine has always been to increase the number of students when I call non-traditional programs. There are tremendous job opportunities for female students in aviation mechanics, automotive technology, machine tool technology, and industrial maintenance. As a matter of fact, the governor had the opportunity to chat with one of our outstanding female aviation mechanic students while he was at Nashville and had a great visit with her. There are also great opportunities for male students in programs like nursing and many of the healthcare programs. Matter of fact, Janice, I tried to recruit your outstanding student, Adnan Burka, this morning to serve as a faculty member, a male faculty member in our practical nursing program. So he said after another year, I told him after another year of work experience, come and see me. We're also proud of the work we do in serving students from what I call lower socioeconomic backgrounds. Many of you may not know that 75% of our students report family incomes of less than $24,000 a year. 45% of our students report family incomes of less than $12,000 per year. You know, usually these are students that are normally the most difficult to serve because they have so many economic barriers. You know, I'm proud of the fact that, you know, even with these students from lower socioeconomic backgrounds, we're completing nearly 80% of those students and placing nearly 80% of those students. So I think our campuses are doing a great job. You know, I think one thing it has to do with is what I call the hand-holding. We do a fabulous job on many of our campuses in hand-holding these particular students. I think it was interesting, the Gates study that recently, when they studied the technology centers, they used the term embedded student services because everyone on our campus is part of the student service process. But I called it just good old-fashioned hand-holding and working with these individual students. You know, our plan was developed using a committee representing 12 campuses, both from rural and urban areas. You know, once again, the committee followed a very similar process as laid out by Dr. Goff, and all these goals were in line with our system-wide strategic plan of access, student success, quality, resourcefulness, and efficiency. Once again, since this has always been part of our strategic plan, that was the starting point, and we will continue to revise the plan and target areas that needs focus. Some of the initial goals, and we're going to quickly go through those, you can see those, was first to develop an online access and diversity training course through the TBR website, and this is in order to educate every faculty member and every staff on our campuses. All of them will be required to go through this online training. It's a very similar thing that what we do with our sexual harassment training right now, that all faculty and staff are required to go through that online. We'd like to develop and expand the use of technology to promote online offerings and use of online resources, and this is primarily to the underserved populations. Develop online remediation and orientation course to increase the participation and student understanding of expectations and the student and the TTC environment. We'd like to promote diversity and increase participation of underserved populations on the TTC campuses by incorporating diversity into our advisory committees. Let's get more individuals involved from the business and industry sector that represent the diverse populations in the areas. Like to spotlight successful diverse students and addressing non-traditional opportunities at a much earlier age. Utilize a mentoring program comprised of alumni and outstanding student of the year winners. And these are, because matter of fact, the last year outstanding student of the year was a young man of color. And next is to identify and pursue potential funding related to access and diversity. I think we're proud to announce that several of our campuses received an Access and Diversity grant from Wendy's office just recently. Folks, you know, we're proud of the work that we have done in Access and Diversity thus far, and I think this system-wide plan will take it one step further. We will continue to monitor and improve the plan as time goes by. Mr. Chairman, this concludes my report. If there are any questions.
Thank you, Mr. King. Are there any questions?
Mr. Chairman, I don't have a question. I just have a comment. I think this is great work. Appreciate what Wendy's doing.
Yeah.
There's two regions coming from a large, diverse population down in Shelby County. I know you can appreciate what she's doing, and I look forward to the next report.
Yeah. Thank you. Any other comments? Thank you.
May I just add one thing?
Yes, please.
Thank you very much to Dr. Goff and to Vice Chancellor King, and I wanted to let you know that we have, for the first time, we've aligned the planning cycle so that reporting updates on the diversity plans will be in conjunction with strategic planning reports, so you will be hearing more. Thank you, Regent Ferris, and thank you.
Thank you. Okay. All right. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the strategic plan as institutional planning targets and the mission statements. Chancellor Morgan, you want to walk us through that?
Thank you, Ms. Vice Chair. I will, and I'll try to be brief in light of the time. But y'all have seen this now several times, and we were able to talk about much of this during the retreat yesterday, following up on our committee chairs meeting where Dr. Short, who normally would be presenting this were she here, went through in pretty good detail with you about what this represents. But just a couple of brief things that I will just note. We believe, and as we discussed yesterday and as we have talked earlier, that the targets and the institutional missions that are reflected in the document that we're asking you to approve and adopt align very closely with the Complete College Act. Although the strategic plan was really adopted back in December of 2009 in advance of the Complete College Act, I think the fact that it does line up so well speaks great volumes about the work that this Board of Regents and the institutions in our board have done, because we're all headed in the same direction, and perhaps in some ways, perhaps the Complete College Act was really a reflection of the good work that was already being done by the Tennessee Board of Regents and our institutions. So it does align. We have specific goals, specific targets that relate to the four major areas that have been identified in the strategic plan: access, student success, quality, and resourcefulness. Notably, we believe all of those goals, all of those targets really do promote the idea of student success and the idea of increased completions. Our targets for completions by 2015 really represent pretty significant improvement. In 2015, we would anticipate awarding 26% more diplomas and degrees than we did in our benchmark year of 2010. So we believe this is a stretch goal. We believe it will stretch our institutions to achieve it, but believe that with our support, with their support, with the hard work that goes on throughout this system, that we will be successful in doing our part for the public agenda in the state of Tennessee. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have about that, but would recommend to you that you favorably consider this proposal.
Prior to asking for any questions, is there a motion to approve these? Is there a second? Any questions? All in favor of approval of the strategic plan, institutional planning targets, and the mission statements indicate approval by aye. Opposes by the same sign, one by nay. Motion is approved. Thank you. Next item is the approval of the March 8th, 2011 minutes of the special call meeting of Academic Policy and Program Student Life Committee that includes the proposed provision to the student rules. Our General Counsel and Board Secretary, Chris Modisher, is going to give us an update and present that item. Chris.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. All right.
You have before you as the next item on the agenda significant revisions to the student disciplinary and parking rules. This, under state law, we're required to do student disciplinary and housing rules under the Administrative Procedures Act. This is a statutory process that is pretty complex. It starts with you all adopting the rules as a board. It then goes to the Attorney General's office for legal review and approval. It goes then to the Secretary of State's office where they are published, and there's a 90-day waiting period to see if anybody wants to have a rulemaking hearing. After that 90 days, there is another 90 days before they become effective. Then after that effective date, there's required to be a hearing before the Government Operations Committee in the state legislature, and they need to then finally approve it or else they expire. Over time, we have had system rules as well as disciplinary rules from each institution. It's ended up with, a 3 or 4 inch thick set of rules that involve this very time-consuming process every time somebody wants to change from associate to assistant vice president or, change a little bit of a piece in the rule. It has involved this very lengthy process. Because of the Complete College Act, this contemplates a community college system. We have taken this opportunity really to streamline the student rule process for everyone. And we convened a group in conjunction with academic affairs from across the state to look at the rules. They have studied these revisions and approved it. We will now have one set of system-wide rules, both describing student disciplinary behaviors and sanctions and traffic and parking procedures. If you adopt this, under these proposed rules, the schools will be developing policies on their campus that will come to you as a board that will include the specific traffic and parking fines, specific site-specific implementation that would not require promulgation under the Administrative Procedures Act. It will just make the changes easier to make and the system more responsive, and you will probably see those plans come to the board in September so that we will have something in place when these rules are repealed, because what we will be doing is not only changing the system-wide rules but repealing all of the individual institutional rules. So that is before you, and we recommend its approval.
Okay. Thank you, Chris. You've heard the recommendation for approval of the minutes of the special call meeting. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. Any questions? This is an item, as I understand, that requires a roll call vote, so Madam Secretary, call the roll.
Regent Duckett?
Aye.
Regent Kisber? Aye. Regent Ferris? Aye. Regent Gidcombe? Aye. Regent Griscom? Regent Markham? Regent Markham? Aye. Regent McCollum?
Aye.
Regent Montgomery? Aye. Regent Reynolds? Aye. Regent Roddy? Aye. Regent Thomas?
Aye.
Regent Varlin? Aye. Motion carries.
Thank you. Last formal item that requires a vote on my agenda is the approval of the March 8th minutes of the special call meeting of the Personnel Committee that includes the hiring of a central office communications director, and I will turn to Chancellor Morgan for a brief update on that action.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. I think as most of you know, perhaps all of you know, We did a search for a communication director for the system office. It was a position got a lot of interest, a lot of good candidates. In the end, though, it was apparent that the best choice for us was Monica Greppin, who had been working with us on an interim basis really since October 1st. Monica is coming from Tennessee Tech, so Dr. Bell loses in this proposition, but it's for the good of the system, so I'm sure he'll he'll get over it, I hope. But Monica is an outstanding person. I think all of you have been able to work with her, and the committee was kind enough to meet and to allow us to make that offer, and this would ratify that. So I'd recommend, wholeheartedly recommend approval.
You've heard the recommendation from Chancellor Morgan. Is there a motion to approve? Second. It's been moved and second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye. Aye. It opposes, no. Thank you, and congratulations to Monica. Last item, prior to adjourning, I'll call on Chancellor Morgan to see if there are any announcements relative that he would like to make to the board today.
No, Mr. Vice Chair, other than just say thank you again for your participation yesterday and for a good meeting. And for Monica, you can hang pictures in your office now. So it's
Yes, that's right. You can unpack the boxes now. Let me, as part of my closing comments, do what I did on the front end. And President Gilliam, if you're still here again, I want to personally thank you and your team for the hospitality that you have extended to us. Our June quarterly meeting will be hosted by Nashville State Community College in Nashville. And if there's no further business to come before the board, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.